You know how The Simpsons has this crazy reputation for predicting the future, right? From politics to new tech, they somehow seem to call it. It's wild. Well, the latest prophecy to go viral might just be the most out there one yet. We're talking about the beloved cartoon family, the high-stakes world of cryptocurrency, and a truly jaw-dropping price prediction for XRP. Okay, let's get right into this.
So this whole thing really blew up from a single post on X. Crypto analyst Crypto Bull shared this super dramatic video clip and just asked, The Simpsons, #XRP prediction, is it possible? And boom, that's all it took to light a fire under the entire crypto community. I mean, it's the perfect storm, right? You've got the show's almost mythical status as a crystal ball clashing with the passionate hopes of XRP investors. So what was in this clip that got everyone so fired up?
All right, so here's the million-dollar question, or maybe the $100,000 question. Is this a real, genuine clip where the Simpsons writers somehow peered into the future of digital money? Or is there something else going on here? Let's pull back the curtain on the story that's got everybody talking and figure out what's really behind it.
Now, get a load of the plot they cooked up here. It's pure Hollywood. The story kicks off with total disaster. Homer loses every penny he has because Bitcoin, the king of crypto, completely implodes, crashing all the way down to a single dollar. Total chaos. But then, Lisa, who's always the smart one, tells Marge to put what little they have left into XRP. And the result? XRP goes on this unbelievable moonshot to $100,000 a coin. The Simpsons are suddenly richer than they could ever imagine. But wait, it gets better. The story layers in this whole conspiracy angle, with secret files showing that Bitcoin was just a test run, and that some powerful shadowy group had picked XRP all along to be the real global currency. I mean, you can't write a better script.
Okay, that is one heck of a story. Seriously, it's got the drama, the comeback, the conspiracy, it's got it all. But this is exactly where we have to pump the brakes and draw a really clear line in the sand. Because as much fun as that story is, we have to separate that fan-made fantasy from the much, much more complicated reality of the financial markets.
So here's the absolute key to this whole thing. That viral clip? It's not a real Simpsons prediction. It's what you call a fan-edited montage. What that means is some creative fan went and grabbed a bunch of totally unrelated clips from different episodes over the years, stitched them together, and basically created a brand new story, a totally unofficial narrative that fits this XRP fantasy perfectly. It's clever, it's entertaining for sure, but it has zero connection to the actual writers or creators of The Simpsons. And understanding that difference, well, it's everything.
This slide just lays it out so clearly. You've got two completely different worlds. Over on the left, that's the meme story. A lottery ticket price of 100 grand, a major competitor collapsing, this secret destiny. It's simple, it's exciting. But then on the right, you have market reality. An asset's actual value isn't decided by a cool story. It's driven by these less sexy but way more important factors. Are big institutions adopting it? Is there regulatory clarity? Does it have a real-world use? That's the stuff that actually matters.
Okay, so if we push the cartoon fantasy completely off the table, what are we left with? Let's move beyond the hype and actually dig into the real, tangible arguments for XRP's value. We're going to shift gears now from pure speculation to the fundamentals to see what this technology is actually built to do.
So these are the real building blocks of XRP's potential. First and foremost, its original purpose was to be a bridge currency. The whole idea was to make sending money internationally way faster and cheaper than the old school banking systems. Then you've got its use in tokenization. That's basically turning real-world things into digital assets, and in the world of DeFi, or decentralized finance. Of course, its success also really depends on getting big institutional partners on board, and finally, things like bringing in stablecoins, cryptos tied to the dollar, and seeing real activity on its own decentralized exchange. All of these things add up to a healthy, functioning ecosystem. These are the metrics to watch.
So if the meme's $100,000 price tag is pure fantasy, where does a more realistic analysis put it? Well, based on all those factors we just talked about, the source material points out that grounded, though still pretty optimistic, long-term targets from analysts usually fall somewhere in the mid-double-digit to low triple-digit range. Now, don't get me wrong, that's still massive growth from where it is today, but it's a valuation that's based on actual utility and adoption, not a cartoon. The gap between that and $100,000 is, well, it's the gap between analysis and fiction.
So you have to wonder, right? If all the real numbers point to a much more sober reality, then why on earth did this Simpsons story go so viral? It really gets to a fascinating point about investing itself. What is it about a good story that can sometimes feel even more powerful than cold, hard data?
Yeah, this chart really breaks it down. These stories have a real, actual impact, especially on retail sentiment, on everyday investors. A good story is just easier to wrap your head around and way more exciting to share than, say, a technical white paper. And that, of course, drives social media engagement. The likes, the shares, the comments. It acts like a giant megaphone, making the story feel more and more credible. And all of that leads to speculative hype, where people might start buying in just because of FOMO, the fear of missing out, instead of because they have a solid reason to invest. The story itself becomes the reason for the price to move.
And this slide right here, this is the core lesson in all of this. When you rely on these entertaining stories to make your financial decisions, you're taking a huge risk. Why? Because you're choosing to ignore the fundamental real-world factors that are actually going to shape an asset's future. You're picking drama over data.
So how do we stop ourselves from getting swept up in the next big viral meme? How do we make sure we're investors who are guided by information, not just a good story? The answer is pretty simple. You need to have a clear, disciplined way to analyze things. You need a framework.
Here's a super practical 4-step framework you can use. First step, analyze adoption. Are real companies, real developers actually using the technology? Step 2, monitor on-chain activity. That just means looking at the blockchain data itself to see if people are genuinely using the network to make transactions. Step 3 is a big one. Track regulatory progress. In this space, legal clarity is absolutely everything. And finally, step 4, always bring it back to utility. What real-world problem is this thing actually solving? This is how you shift your brain away from just speculating on price and towards understanding real value.
When it's all said and done, the real takeaway is this. If XRP is going to succeed in the long run, its story isn't going to be written by a clever piece of pop culture fiction. It's going to be written through real-world adoption and the slow, steady work of building out its infrastructure.
And that really leaves us with one final question to think about. And be honest with yourself on this one. How much does a really compelling story, a charismatic founder, or a viral meme really shape your view of what something is worth? You know, just understanding our own psychology here is probably the biggest first step to becoming a smarter, more rational investor.
Hey, if you found this breakdown helpful for, cutting through all the noise and focusing on what actually matters, do us a quick favor and subscribe to the channel. And make sure you hit that notifications bell so you don't miss our next explainer.
And last but not least, the important stuff. Please remember that this is all for informational and educational purposes. It should never be considered financial advice. We really urge you to do your own deep dive research and talk with a professional before you make any investment decisions. Any action you decide to take is strictly at your own risk. Thanks for watching.